All right, so we're going to pick up here. I think we were on the emergency banking bill. Um, or maybe we were already on Social Security Act. So Social Security Act, what was it intended to do or to help? It was to help retirees through a pension payroll tax. So Social Security Act was that pension payroll tax to help retirees. Now, if we move on to Republicans in 1938, um, really in 1938, the Republicans gained control of Congress again, and much of that reason was because, um, remember, FDR had gotten to the place where unemployment was going up, and then this was kind of the last slide on probably notes 13.5, maybe the second to last slide, but they had the economy was going up, so he cut back federal spending because he was worried about the deficit, and then unemployment jumped back up to 20%. So a lot of the progress that he had done was wiped out by an economic downturn. So the Republicans were able to take the Congress in 1938. Opposition to the New Deal. Um, First of all, you should know the goals of the New Deal, which is the three R's: relief, recovery, and reform. Um, and then the opposition would be the Republicans, conservatives. They argued that it made the federal government too powerful. It didn't allow for individual freedom, and it really was not solving the Great Depression. Now let's move a little bit more on here to really the only question I have about her is about her stance with minorities. She supported anti-lynching laws. She also sat with the black delegates at a conference rather than to sit on the white side of the room in Alabama, which caused quite a stir. Really, her relation to minorities is most of that question. We look at national parks. FDR set aside 12 million acres of land for national parks during his presidency. The terms of FDR, this is literally how many terms did he serve? Then the answer would be 4. The TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority. Many people disapproved of the TVA for this reason. It was owned by the government. It gave the government direct control of a utility company. People saw that as a conflict of interest and not a good thing. It was more socialistic. People didn't like that idea. So the Tennessee Valley Authority gave government a direct control of a business. Now moving down here to the short answer questions. Might need to pause and write a little bit and pause. I'll try to go as slow as possible so you guys are clear on what would be the expectation. These are going to be paragraphs. I'm looking for 40 to 50 words on these. They should be information heavy. Should answer it, completely answer the question. So, economic factors that caused the Great Depression. And that's basically the question. What was the factors that caused the Great Depression? So the first thing you should talk about is that the economy had expanded rapidly in the 1920s. And it started with the farmers. The farmers had too much debt after World War One. They were overproducing the crops. They couldn't sell them domestically or internationally. There was just too many. So it starts with the farmers on the economic factor. Not only did we have farmers that had caused problems with their credit and their inability to sell crops, but we also had industrial production that began to produce at such a speed that the economy was not consuming. And that's what we call underconsumption. When the economy doesn't, basically people aren't buying as much as we're producing, and there's nowhere else to sell the goods. So we overproduce and underconsume. One of the things that they did to try to solve the underconsumption was offer credit. So, credit was offered for a lot of household goods and other things like cars and radios. The stock market began to boom during this time, but most of it was because it was based on speculation and credit. People were buying on the margin. When prices began to come down on the stock market, you can't make money when you buy on the margin. It's a bull market when it's over, producing and everybody's buying on the margin. But as soon as those prices begin to go down, it causes a panic, especially if everybody's bought on the margin. So that panic actually causes the stock market to crash. And then that immediately affects bank closures, which happened all over the nation. People lost their investments, they lost their savings. At the same time, when people lose all their individual money and their investments, it leads to farm and business failures, which causes unemployment. And then people that are unemployed or working on reduced wages do not spend money. So we still go back to that underconsumption problem. You can see how the chain reactions with the economic factors in the Great Depression continued to cause problems. None of it helped it get better, it just kept getting worse. All right, so Hoover's response to the Great Depression. So, first thing you should talk about is Hoover believed in a hands-off policy. He believed that it was a part of the business cycle, which is the contraction, not the expansion. The expansion is the boom. This would be the bust. And so this was just the bust of the business cycle. He focused on volunteerism, which means big businesses work together and wealthy people work together to try to solve the economy. The government's not involved in it. And localism. States, counties work to solve problems on a local level. He tried to get Congress to pass, and they did, the RFC, which actually was supposed to loan money to businesses so they would be able to hire more employees and expand. But the government's use of trickle-down economics actually didn't work in that case because that was takes too long for trickle-down economics to work. And when people received loans from the government, they didn't always put them back into the economy. So by 1932, unemployment reached 25%. Homelessness was increasing. The Bonus Army marches on Washington. Hoover looks bad, and his response failed. Now, the third short answer question focuses on the opposition to the New Deal and the solutions. So opposition to the New Deal kind of goes back to some of that overall idea that we talked about on the multiple choice question. It gave the government too much power. It imposed too much regulation on the economy, and it was too expensive. We began to spend at an astronomical rate. We had never spent this much as a government before. The solutions overall, a lot of people said that the solution to the New Deal was to tax high taxes on the wealthy, direct economic aid for the poor, elderly, disabled. Those were all a part of the solution to the New Deal. That's how they were going to pay for it. Other solutions that were, brought forward besides the New Deal is to use the idea of trickle-down economics, just try it again, and most people weren't for that. All right, so what was Roosevelt's court packing scheme? This is when most of the 9 of the Supreme Court justices opposed the New Deal, and they started striking down the New Deal as unconstitutional. If you've been following the news in the last week, the president is checked by the courts, whether it's a federal court or the Supreme Court. They can declare something unconstitutional, and that can halt the expansion or the executive order of the executive branch. That's kind of what happened in this case. They began to strike down a lot of the New Deal measures because there's nothing in the Constitution that allows the president to regulate interstate commerce, meaning like you can't have these programs like the CCC that goes over a couple states and employs all these people, because there's nothing in the Constitution that says the president can do that. So he came up with a court packing scheme. The scheme was that he would nominate 6 more justices to the Supreme Court, that those 6 justices would be nominated by him and confirmed by the Senate. And so overall, the justices would be obviously picked by him, so they probably would support the New Deal, and that would turn the Supreme Court more in his favor, and they would stop striking down New Deal regulation. What actually happened was that court packing scheme did not happen. We actually still only have 9 justices on the Supreme Court, but the justices actually become more friendly to the New Deal, and a couple of them that were really opposed to Roosevelt actually retired or died, and that the Supreme Court stopped striking down those measures. So it's important to realize that he tried to upset the balance of the 3 branches of government, but it didn't work. But overall, he accomplished his goal. So that's what you would write for that 4th short answer question. I'm expecting these short answer questions to be information heavy. You should take some of the thoughts that I have along with your notes and different things that you've learned as you went through it in group projects and try to add to that, because the expectation is that you know what you're talking about with these questions. So studying them, maybe replaying this video a couple times would be a great idea.